Our theme this year was Rotary Connects the World, and I'd like to read you a story that fits in nicely with that theme. It's the story of a young girl living in a land far, far away. She lives in the remote city in the blue-green foothills of the Himalayas, and when I say foothills, you have to imagine the Appalachians on steroids. You get there after a 3-hour drive over a muddy, single-lane mountain road with the occasional bus or semi-wreck at the bottom of a ravine, just to show you how quickly something can go wrong. On a good day, you can see the peaks of the Annapurna Range from the single window in the 2 rooms that she shares with her mother and her father and her brother. And on a bad day, you can't get out of her city because the dirt streets are too muddy or the mountain roads are impassable. It's a very, very different place than any of the cities we're from. But like our hometowns, family bonds are tight. People look out for one another. Joking and laughter are always in the air. 4 years ago, a man in the girl's small town decided to start a Rotary Club. Quite a bold step, no nearby clubs, no real support. And just like our Rotary clubs, they meet once a week, but they meet on an open rooftop on the top of a 4-story apartment building at night and under the stars. The women cook food at home and bring it to the meeting where they have a potluck and drink and talk until late into the night. The girl's father is a civil servant and decided to join the club, and the girl would tag along as much as she could. No one chased her away. She enjoyed the banter and listening to the dreams that these new Rotarians had for their small part of the world. And she also began to understand that Rotary is huge. 1.2 million members, 30,000 clubs around the globe, and that Rotary spearheaded the fight to eradicate polio and is involved in everything from drinking water initiatives to conflict resolution. 3 years ago, the man who started the Rotary Club had an idea. He put an announcement on the Rotary International website telling the world that his new Rotary Club was interested in inviting Rotarians from anywhere in the world to come and visit. And without enough money to travel themselves, they wanted to host and feed anyone able to make the trip to visit them. A Rotary Friendship Exchange chair on the other side of the globe stumbled upon that invitation, and in October of 2016, 10 Americans, after a long and difficult journey, drove into the girls' town in a couple of old Indian-made Jeeps. All the local Rotarians were in the town square to greet the Americans when they arrived. And the Americans laughed when they noticed a small but very energetic 14-year-old girl trying to get all the adults lined up for the perfect group picture. Each day, the local Rotarians took their visitors to a remote mountain village of just a few hundred people. And there they were greeted by the entire village. Speeches, dancing, bands, more speeches, food, you name it. 6 to 7 hours a day, 3 days in a row, 3 different villages. And the people living in the villages were the poorest of the poor, all with incomes of under $1 a day and many with no income at all. Those with no income living off the land as best they can. And in all cases, what these villages had for schools were rendered unusable by the recent earthquake, so the kids were studying under the blue skies or in the rain, depending on the day. Their outdoor classrooms offered just one thing, just some of the most stunning views in the world. And on the days when the Americans traveled, the girl would search the Jeeps for any corner or crevice that she could squeeze herself into, and when possible, she would join the visitors on their drive up the mountain in the morning and back down in the afternoon. always listening, always trying to understand, always trying to make herself understood. After 4 days, the Americans were preparing to leave, and as they sat together having lunch, one of them asked a really simple question. Had anyone else thought about how far that spunky girl would take it if she was living in a more developed part of the world? And all 10 agreed that the sky was the limit for her. Someone mentioned Rotary Youth Exchange, which sounded like a great idea, but Rotary in Nepal has no real operating youth exchange program. The girl's English was at such a basic level that she could never go to school in the US, and her parents could never afford to have her participate, so the idea was quickly dropped. And as the Americans were leaving, one of them gave the girl his Kindle. He downloaded the Harry Potter series onto it, and he told the girl, first of all, to learn English, and second, to contact him when she was done reading all 7 of the books. 2 years ago, the man was surprised when out of the blue, he received an email from the girl telling him that she was now attending high school in Kathmandu. Kathmandu is a 200-mile drive from the girl's hometown, but the drive takes 10 hours, so although she was relatively close to home, she was in fact quite far from home. And she also mentioned that she'd finished reading the Harry Potter series and joked that she was ready to take a Harry Potter test. The man was impressed and contacted the group that had traveled with him to see if they had any interest in exploring what Rotary Youth Exchange could do with this unusual situation. The group decided to give it a try. A year and a half ago, the girl started an Interact Club at her high school and was its charter president. The club began to carry out some small-scale projects, including one called Happy Periods, an effort to keep young girls in school. And at about the same time, contacts were laid and plans were made between Rotary district governors in Nepal and in the United States, and between Rotary Youth Exchange representatives in both countries. Nepal wasn't certified to host youth exchange students, but a one-way exchange was agreed upon. And then with very little assistance from her parents or her local Rotary club, the girls started working on a very detailed Rotary Youth Exchange application. The same application our Wisconsin students used because Rotary in Nepal didn't have an application. It took her several months to complete. 1 year ago, the girls sent a very large package of application materials to the United States, and these were reviewed by the Central States Rotary Youth Exchange Organization and by the U.S. State Department's Rotary representative, and the girl was accepted into the program and was sent the paperwork she needed for the next step. This past May, a very nervous girl arrived at the U.S. Embassy in Kathmandu with a piece of paper she'd received from the United States. She was ushered into a small room. She sat down and one of the embassy staff interviewed her. And the interview went well, and with her J-1 visa in hand, the Americans that had traveled to Nepal could now purchase the final 2 things the girl needed: medical insurance and a plane ticket. On August 17th, 2019, the girl's family and friends waved goodbye to her at the airport in Kathmandu. She flew the 6 hours to Qatar and then the 14 hours to Chicago, where she warmly greeted her first host dad, Andy, and where she gave a great big hug to her second host dad, me. And that's the 4-year backstory on how Isa Podel from Agatakachi, Nepal, started high school this fall in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin.